this is a matter culturally that has been going on for decades.
Welcome to Face Chicago. I'm Debbie Frazier. To serve and protect. That's the phrase adopted by law enforcement agencies around the country. Many citizens do view the police as our protectors, but for too many African Americans, the police are viewed not as protectors, but as people they need to be protected from. Today we're talking about that and some of the other challenges Chicago faces. To start things off, Pastor Walter Blaylock of Living Gospel Church of God in Christ in Elgin shares a story from a few years ago about his personal encounter with police in his community.
We had a revival over on the west side of Elgin, and we was having like a testimonial service. And as we was having a testimonial service, we kept on hearing this pop, pop, pop. And we looked around, and this guy was chasing another guy, shooting at him. And I tried to stop him, and everybody was, the parishioners at the revival, they was dived on the ground. Kids was being covered by their parents, and they're running in the middle of the revival. This guy's shooting. Thank God that nobody got hurt. And the police officers came. When I grabbed the guy and told him, you know, hey man, you got to stop this. You know, you could kill somebody out here. You know, he said, well, that's what I'm trying to. I said, no, that's what you don't want to do. And you know, and the guy he ran behind him, and as he ran behind him, what I did is saw a police officer. A squad car was coming down adjacent to the revival. I stopped, held the police down. The police said, what's the problem? I said, got a guy over here shooting. You know? And he said, that's what you stopped me for? I said, yeah, the guy's shooting here. We having a revival. And he pulled off. He kept on going, saying he said, you know, like it was a fictitious tale or something, like I was making this up. He left.
Pastor Michael Eaddy from the People's Church of the Harvest on Chicago's West Side joins me today. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You just heard that story. Does it shock you?
No, it's not as much shocking as it is disturbing, but it is far too common because in our communities, in terms of our interaction with police officers, they sometimes look at us, meaning us in the community, as subhuman, maybe even animals, something foreign, strange, something that has to be dealt with not as you would give respect to another human being, but as you would interact with maybe even an animal.
See, now I find that really disturbing. Why is that?
Well, I think that, number one, they're not familiar many times with the community. Many of them come from communities and have references that they cannot connect. So they haven't had an opportunity to interact with African Americans. And with them, many times they're going by opinions that they have formed, input that has been given to them by others, and they come with preset opinions and views, and many times it's very negative.
Has that occurred with you?
Yes, oh yes. I mean, I was raised up on the west side of the city of Chicago, and everything that any young person has experienced, I have, and I have continued to experience it even in my adult age as I am now. I'm 65 years old.
In a suit and a tie, just as you are.
Just as I am. I can be pulled over.
But you sit before me and not soured.
Well, I'll say this. First of all, I'm a believer, so my faith speaks to me. But also, I'm an individual that I'm on a mission to address many things. And so, no, I'm not bitter, but I am very focused and concerned about the fact that these matters need to be spoken to.
Okay, what are some other obstacles that the police face in policing correctly?
Well, one of the things, and I was just in a meeting recently with our mayor, and one of the things that I asked them, what are they doing in their hiring practices to make assessments of the mental condition of prospective officers? Because my opinion is that many officers are not mentally and emotionally suited to be able to police in our communities. Because if they have certain prejudices, if they are bent in their perspective and view of individuals, they're going to deal with us according to their opinion, and they often, many times,
Or their experience.
and of their experiences, whatever those might have been.
Police officer, very dangerous job.
Yeah.
Do you take that into account?
Well, I say this, no one should be a police officer that does not weigh what that job is going to require.
I agree with you.
And many of them, they get into the job, it's economics driven, but when they begin to encounter the experiences they're having, then they begin to operate out of what is innately their response, which moves totally away from the occupation, and they begin dealing with us as African Americans,
Or,
according to that.
as you say, potentially animals.
Well, yes, because first of all, they don't view that we're educated. We haven't been brought up properly. We've lived deprived lives. They just figure these are just some throwaways,
Ex-con.
ex-cons. Now, this is their assumption, but that's not the case, because within our communities, I come from a family of a mother and a father, responsible. They sent me to be educated. They raised me up in a certain way, but that's not often the view, only because when they see many times the young men, they have the dreadlocks, they have the hoodies, they're sagging in their pants, you know. All right, they conclude this is someone that is lesser.
Well, maybe somehow in this program we can help educate. So much more to cover with you. More with Pastor Michael Eaddy, including how the faith community is speaking into these issues after the break.
When I was living in Naperville, Illinois, I worked for AT&T Bell Laboratories. That's where I retired from as a software engineer. I worked night shifts and did lab work at night a lot of times, and afterwards I would go home. I would stop and get a Slurpee or something to drink on the way home in the same neighborhood where I lived. I would often be followed by the police all the way through town until I got to my destination. After a while, they began to stop me. When I would pull into the White Hen, they would pull in behind me, and when I came out, they would question me, ask me who I was, ask for ID, go through the whole shot, ask if they could look in my car and what was I doing there. After a while, it got to be kind of annoying because the same officer stopped me several times. 3 times in 1 week, I was stopped by the same guy, and he didn't recognize me. And I knew who he was. The 3rd time he stops me, I call him by his name as he's approaching, and he looks at me like, how do you know me? And I'm thinking, you stopped me twice already this week in the same spot. How do you not recognize me? We can't all certainly look that familiar. 6'3", 230-pound black male driving a BMW 7 Series. That's not every day in Naperville. And so his response to me was that they were proactive and that they didn't wait for crime to happen. But that if something looked suspicious, they looked into it before the crime happened.
For many watching, you've had the same experiences that Pastor Mike Neal had a number of years ago in Naperville. Today, Michael Eaddy is my guest. Pastor Eaddy's church is the People's Church of the Harvest on Chicago's West Side. What do you have to say about that story?
Well, actually, I can relate to it. And the striking point was at the end when he said that the officer viewed that what they do is to be proactive. And that, to me, registers racial profiling.
Racial profiling.
That the fact that a person is an African American poses the potential of crime or something.
With an expensive car, even.
And an expensive car. And by the way, I drive an S550, and I've been pulled over as well. And when I'm pulled over, I'm dealt with just like an individual with the dreads, hoodie, and pants sagging, and it doesn't matter. It's because I'm black and potential criminal or potential violent offender.
Let's talk about the police union.
Okay. Well, that is a major thing, especially in my experience in Chicago. And it is playing out in terms of how officers are being handled. The Fraternal Order of Police and what they have framed in what is called a collective bargaining agreement, they shield and shelter police officers who are charged with misconduct. And the way they have it framed, an individual even who fulfills something that is classified misconduct is protected from questioning. They are not ever incarcerated or placed in jail. They have no bond requirements. They don't have to respond for a particular period of time. And all of that gives them opportunity to frame their response or their side of the story in a way that will always excuse the offender, which in this case is the police officer.
When someone is accused of misconduct,
Right.
I believe that you would feel very strongly if it was a mistaken identity or if the gentleman is actually innocent, you would care about that. You are a fair person.
Okay.
Right? Are you not?
Yes, I'm definitely a fair
Yeah.
person.
But you want to make sure that the facts are correct and that they are communicated.
And yes, I want to make sure they're communicated and they are accurate. But if there has been allowed time to frame the narrative, one of the major matters that raised so much ruckus around that was the Laquan Mcdonald incident, where video had been held for over a year. So you get a report, you get a narrative that goes unchallenged for a year.
Period of time.
For a year. So then when those videos were released, now, but this is what we were told, but this is what we see. And then what they see is a world away from what they were told.
You're on the Chicago Police Board.
Yes.
And what is the purpose of that group?
Well, we review matters that emerge that are presented for disciplinary action that comes through what is now in place is called IPRA, and it goes before our superintendent. And if there is a need for it to advance for further review, it comes to the Chicago Police Board.
Okay, and he's now serving as the superintendent of the
Yes.
department, but will his appointment change? Will that change, or will it change what's going on in the department?
Well, I'll say this. We are optimistic that the new police superintendent and his appointment, and the truth of the matter is, every indication is that he is moving towards change.
Okay,
But
it's hard to know.
Well, it's not hard to know, but it's hard to accomplish.
Okay.
Because this is a matter culturally that has been going on for decades. And that big ship won't be able to turn overnight.
And here you are in the middle.
Oh yeah, and I put myself in the middle because that's part of how we get to the housing and all these different things. We have to look at the big picture of what our community is faced with, and faith leaders like myself, we have to address it because that's the only way we can curb the violence and really partner with the police officers in that sense by providing good housing, by training ex-offenders, by fulfilling meeting needs that they may have. That's what we do.
How important is the role of parenting in curbing the violence?
Well, if the parenting is not in place, it only fuels the chaos that is on the streets. And part of what many of us as faith leaders are doing, we have parenting programs. Why? Because many of the parents nowadays are much younger. They're 16 years old, 15 years old. Sometimes individuals are grandparents by the time they are 26, 27. They know nothing about parenting.
And you believe this whole situation with the police and your community can and will change?
Well, it can and will change if there are individuals like myself involved, and we are very confident that the new superintendent has a commitment to building trust between community and police. As a ministry, we're guided by our vision statement: making disciples, uplifting humanity, transforming community, expanding God's kingdom, and impacting the world. What we believe is we're going to make a difference, and we are committed to that. Our congregation is committed to that.
I hear hope.
Yeah, oh, yes.
I don't hear discouragement, I hear hope.
And I want you to know as well, it's hope, but I'm on an assignment.
Amen. And more on these issues when we return. Stay with us. Pastor Michael Eaddy isn't content to stay inside his church and preach the gospel from the safety of his pulpit. He's a member of the police board where he engages with law enforcement on behalf of the community. He holds prayer vigils and knocks on neighborhood doors, sharing hope and faith, meeting with people where they live to bring the light of Christ to them. You do so much for your community. But tell us about the issue of violence. What is plaguing violence in Chicago?
Well, right now there is a broken trust between the police and the community. And that is what is fueling many of the conflicts that are occurring. But also what is contributing to the violence is the poor schools, lack of employment opportunities, poor housing, parenting in terms of the lack of it, and those kinds of things. They fuel the kind of climate that contributes to violence.
So tell us about the Preservation of Life campaign and then also the housing that your church is doing.
Yeah, well, the Preservation of Life campaign is really a faith-based, church-led initiative, and it is in response to the shooting deaths. When we consider the shooting deaths of police, of black young men, but we also take into account black young men shooting and killing black young men. And so we mobilize members from churches. We have some 200 churches and faith-based groups participating. They are mobilized to go to the streets. We carry a message about faith and hope in Jesus Christ and the power of the blood of Jesus Christ. And in mobilizing them, They go door to door, and we carry that message. But also, with what we see, that to your question about what's fueling the violence, one of the things that we see was the lack of good housing. And so we have now developed 36 units of affordable housing, 4 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and it is the first of its kind in the East Garfield Park community in over 3 decades.
Your church has done that.
Yes, right. And we're very excited about that because this will provide affordable housing for many times single parent households. And this will provide them what many of them have longed for.
You love the community, don't you?
I do love it. I do love it. I was born and raised on the west side of the city of Chicago. I never saw myself participating in the life of it as I am now. And I tell people all the time, I am attempting to recapture the community I saw as a child.
Wow.
This community is not the same community that I was raised up in as a child, but it has changed over the years and it come to be far more violent today than it was.
Well, I pray that it returns along with you. And thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
More after the break. Our society has a long way to go when it comes to breaking down ingrained prejudices. I hope this program helped to educate you on the need for every citizen to get involved in their communities. We at TLN are here for you as well. If you'd like to know more about how to find a relationship with God through Jesus Christ, or if you want to pray, call us. We also want to know what's going on in your community. Contact us at faithchicago@tln.com with events or people you think we should know. Thanks for watching and consider partnering with us. TLN is donor supported. Join us again next time on Faith Chicago.